this morning. I will now spotlight you for everyone. The floor is yours now. Welcome.
Thank you. And now the first moment of truth that the presentation will start once again. So welcome from my side. I'm Kimmo Keravuori and working as a standards and compliance lead here in GS1 Finland. And I'm not sure how many of you know what GS1 actually is and what we do. We are a neutral and not-for-profit standardized organization, and we work as global and local actor. So we have a global office that is located in Brussels, but then we have 118 member organizations, so different country organizations who are independent organizations. But we all work under the same standards and for the interoperability. So we are user-driven and governed organization, and the aim is that our members or users have the needs, and then we develop our standards. We've been around over 50 years now, and our most kind of famous product is the EAN UPC barcode, which is reported to be scanned 10 billion times a day. And at the same time, Google has been reported that there's approximately 6 billion Google searches per day. So we are actually more used than Google, but still a bit less known organization. And as I said, that we have 118 country organizations, but we still work in 150 countries. So those countries that don't have their own organization is run by our global office. So GS1 Finland is part of the GS1 family, and we provide and develop standards for basically every single sector or industry there is. So we are sector agnostic organization. Our management board is covering different kind of companies, mostly from retail sector, but as I said, that we still work on basically all sectors. So that's not kind of limiting our working. And we also work with different kind of organization and partners and standardized bodies. So for example, we are ISO compliant, so part of ISO. And what we actually do, we have kind of the basic is part of 3 parts: is identify, capture, and share. And as said, industry independent data standards and services that help businesses to work together, have the common business language, especially on the data sharing side, because every time you have some kind of database, you need the identification. You have to know what the information is tied to. And then with the physical and digital world, there is need to kind of capture and know the actual physical item, but then you also need the data sharing side. So basically this picture explains this combination better. So under, let's see, from the bottom of the picture is the kind of the base of the whole system, so the identification. And with the standard, you can basically identify whatever you need. Products, especially consumer products and packaging, are those main, well, the historical parts that have been identified most, but more and more shipments, locations, parties, transportations can be identified. And then on the kind of left side, there is the physical world with the captures part. So barcodes, 2D codes, RFID. We have set of different kind of barcodes that can be used with GS1 standards, so that when you capture the physical ID, it's machine readable, and then you can tie it to the actual information that you can share through the standard. So master data, transactional data, and what we are today talking more about is the event data, so EPCIS, so meaning basically traceability data. So all that can be kind of tied together and make the whole of the GS1 world on the three layers. That's the very, very short introduction of what GS1 is. And now we're talking about the legislation, what is coming, and how we are kind of connected to that. So more on that. So as everybody knows, there is a lot of different kind of EU regulations coming. EU Green Deal has been talking. If I remember correctly, they have even kind of changed the name even more ambitious. But it's not so much anymore even kind of traditional traceability. There's more and more also about the circularity. And with that comes even greater kind of need for the collection of the data, and especially for the sharing part of the data, the traceability data. Many companies have done traceability for many years, and that's not. Some companies might basically start now, but I think most companies have done that for a long time. But with all the legislation that is coming, there's more and more need to kind of share the data with your business partners. So you need to have the common language and structured data to do that, because when you're kind of dealing with your business partners the old-fashioned way, so making the human contact, you can spend the whole day of kind of negotiating that you make sure that you are talking about the same thing. But when you set machines to talk with each other, then there's no time for the whole day conversations. The data has to be kind of known immediately. All this, for example, ESG legislation, there is a really need for the trusted data exchange. So there is, you can kind of think about it in two different levels, basically. There is this risk and compliance legislation where you have to know which business partners you are dealing with. You have to make the risk analysis and show how you are responsible, the responsibility of your actions in the whole value chain. And this goes basically both ways, so upstream and downstream. There is the EU forest regulation, deforestation law that's been a kind of very hot topic for the past year. Luckily, there's been a year postponed for the kind of actual need for that, but that doesn't mean that you can stop working for the year. It just you have one more year to actually do that. You need the certifications, food waste, and different kind of reports of risk possibilities. And also there is the need for the circular business. When the actual traceability doesn't end when the product is being purchased and used, there's the kind of post-consumer part. So all this brings the pressure of the more and more advanced traceability and data sharing. Just a kind of quick collection of the different kind of legislation that there is on the EU pipeline, so said, and what we've seen with GS1 and with our members is that you can kind of approach all of these legislations kind of one by one way, but then there is a very big risk that you will for every single legislation you will build a kind of one-point solution, and therefore it's not very high mathematically business or process to understand that way it will be very costly. So with the standards and traceability and with the EPCIS event data processing and data sharing, you can actually build a kind of layer when you have the capability or more advanced capability to answer for basically every single different kind of legislation which has anything to do with traceability. So the kind of one of the key messages is to really build a solid platform so you will be ready for different kind of legislation. And what Rami will later kind of show is that you can also kind of find the a way to have some even business benefits also. So it's not only kind of answering legislation demands. Talking about different kind of use cases and how the whole ecosystem in the supply chain will kind of go. So as I said previously, traditionally, every single part of the value chain has kind of covered their own part or block of this value chain. So most of the especially manufacturing companies have already a lot of traceability information in their systems because they have the whole production planning and solutions for that. So the data is there. The problem is that when manufacturing parties need the information from the upstream, there is either some information or a lot of information, but the way it's been structured, it's not kind of compliant on interoperability to the different solutions that different parties have. And now more and more this goes also to the downstream, and from the recycle part, it kind of comes back to the upstream. So this really shows why there is a really need for the common kind of language how to do this. GS1 has building blocks to this solution. So if talking about digital product passport, like here, so there is the actual digital product passport need. There are some different kind of solution providers. There might be some certificates, and then there's events. So what the kind of key here is to have the actual physical product, and many of those already has the GTIN, or they, some people still say EAN, but that's the actual barcode. So it already has the GS1 identifier. So the legislation itself doesn't demand using GS1 standards, but there's a demand of open standards, and GS1 is one of those. So if you already have GS1 in one part of your actions, then it's kind of makes sense to build on that, use the same standard for the other solutions as well. And with the digital product passport, there is the QR code and the digital link. So that's the way of putting a machine readable code on the actual product and then link consumer for other users, government bodies to the actual information on the web. Then there are the different kind of data models for different purposes, but they can all rely on the same standards. We can identify the certifications, certification bodies, or certified companies, farms, actors, all with the GLN, so global location number, that can identify either a place or a party. And for the events, so there is the EPCIS standard. You can use RFID on that, but you can also use barcodes. So that's not really RFID related or mandatory. So here is the really short introduction from the GS1 side, how we are tied to all this legislation. And as said before, we have the questions after the presentation. So thank you from my side, and now I will hand over to Rami, who will show and tell about Bluugo's side on this whole topic.
Yes, thanks, Kimmo. Sorry about my voice. I catch the flu somewhere again. I'll now try to share my screen here so that we can start the presentation. Let's see. Yeah. So, hello from my part. I'm Rami Juhela, CEO of Bluugo, and we are a SaaS company specialized in providing tools and visibility that help businesses operate in these kind of multi-stakeholder environments across industries. We are dealing with procurement, logistics, manufacturing, and aftermarket services, so we are pretty much covering the entire value chain of a company. From the market perspective, can you hear me, by the way? No. From the market perspective, we focus on the Nordics and DACH regions, especially Germany, and our tracking cloud platform is currently used in a bit over 25 countries through our customers. And I want to emphasize that we are not a compliance or regulation-focused company. As such, we've been on the business for over 10 years, but our solutions are about end-to-end visibility, traceability, collaboration tools, and seamless data integration. And of course, these topics are the key capabilities when we are dealing with EU regulations and these frameworks that Kimmo just mentioned. And this, our first-hand experience, was also a motivation for this webinar to share with you some of these ideas that we have learned. So instead of treating these regulations as a checklist exercise, you could take a little bit more strategic approach and try to align these compliance topics with your business objectives, not the other way around. And we believe that with this approach, it will be possible to fulfill these regulatory requirements step by step, not in a one go or in the last minute, but step by step, and then unlock certain benefits while you go. So we also utilize the standards like GS1, of course, like Kimmo mentioned, and we are one of those technology companies who are participating in this Food Data Finland later on this year. So maybe we see each other or some of you in those things. So we will be there as a technology provider. But for the next 20 minutes, I will be sharing our insight how to make these things happen and some real world examples how our customers are using these things. A quick overview of our customers in various industries and in multiple countries, as said. So we know for sure that companies are struggling. We just noticed that EUDR was postponed a bit, so the timeout again. But the fact is actually that, and we know for a fact that these regulations, they will continue to evolve. They will be more details and whatnot. And like Kimmo mentioned, it is really important to remember that these regulations, they are not isolated. They build on each other. So digital product passport will be utilizing EUDR and these other regulations. So it is not possible to follow these things just by implementing them one by one. Now when we talk about regulations, we know that there is always sanctions involved, and in many cases we have noticed that companies hand over these topics to the legal department or the compliance department, and this will lead to this kind of siloed approach, meeting these minimum requirements. And when that happens, it will be this small checkbox exercise, very difficult to invest in optimizing any business processes or leveraging the data for the business. And of course, it will be for IT very difficult to proceed since we don't have these clear guidelines. And then we will be waiting for these last minute updates and waste a lot of money when things will be done in the last minute. This we want to break, and basically I have collected here 3 points to highlight different approaches what you could be following. They are not by no means something that, hey, we have to do them all, but these kind of checklist items that you could, you know, discuss with your own team and see that will it make sense. So the first point is actually that you should be proactively collecting the data, and what it actually means, I mean, being proactive. If we think about and we look about this data requirement, for instance, regarding the digital product passport, which will be coming later on, we can see clearly that there is a lot of data which companies already have in place. We've been collecting the procurement-related information and whatnot, but the main point here is that you shouldn't be waiting for the regulations to hit in full steam, but you should be collecting all these relevant data, even if you don't know exactly in what kind of format. You should be collecting it and setting yourself up to these upcoming regulations. Great example is for instance this supplier side data, certificates, origins of raw material. All these kind of data sets will provide immediate value to the business, no matter if it's according to the regulations today or not. And if we think about, here is an illustration how our customers are already collecting the data through their normal processes. They've been doing it for years, some of them with our platform more than 10 years. They are not doing it for compliance, and it is very important to understand that everything is based on business needs, and we try to collect every data in standardized format. Like Kimmo mentioned, these standards, they are the common language between different players. So with that setup, we can actually collect the data, who did what and when, and then we have the information available when the time comes. Now with this approach, this approach makes it possible, of course, to enable these things for the future regulations already. So for instance, now considering digital link, many of our customers are already utilizing digital links in their products. So It will be then providing the direct access to the product by scanning the QR code, NFC code, RFID tag or whatever. And then you have these mechanics in place and standardized labeling in place for the upcoming standards. So you should be starting small, using the QR codes for the products, and follow the standards when you are collecting the data. It makes things so much easier. I have a quick example to show you exactly what it means. I will switch the screens very quickly. Now hopefully you can see my mobile screen. Now when I talked about this digital link in a product, it means basically the thing that the customers can access certain data, or the suppliers or the service technicians can access certain data just by using the camera and pointing out the code. And now when I scan the code, I can hopefully see all relevant information in one go. This is not based on any digital, the regulations, but you still have all the data available. You could be collecting the events, who did what and when. You could be seeing all the details in one go, and you could be providing valuable information to your customers and for your stakeholders already. And this access point is actually the digital or the digital link, which is then enabling the digital product passport when the time comes. Now, continuing the presentation. The second key point is focusing on interoperability. And now Kimmo mentioned these long chains regarding upcoming EU regulations. I can quickly show you how does it look like. And sharing my screen again. Now let's check how it goes. So I'm the consumer, I'm picking the camera, and I'm getting the access to the data. And in this case, this is the food industry product. I can see the nutrition information, and I can see the whole production chain basically. So this same code is then providing all this information. And now if I'm thinking about the regulations as such, this same code is also enabling the data access for the manufacturers, retailers, regulators to monitor sustainability and whatnot. So the idea is, of course, that every stakeholder in the value chain will be creating the events and will be seeing the data that is needed. So now I scan the code again, and now I'm in a different role. So I can basically see the regulatory information here, the sources of the data. I can post the events for the topics, and now I can follow the regulative documents. Everyone knows that these things has to be clarified. I can see the events here, and the most importantly, I can drill down to the lowest detail of the regulations. So these kind of tools, if the standard comes as we expect it will come, these are the tools that the companies would need, and this is utilizing the EUDR standard behind the scenes, and then the digital product passport to provide the access for the different stakeholders with the same access code, let's say. So in this respect, it is clear that these kind of data requirements, they cannot be provided with very traditional tools. I come back to that soon. But our key takeaway here is that you should be following. You should be following and adopting these standards whenever it's possible, because collecting those events and providing the access to different stakeholders, you have to exchange a lot of data, and you have to be able to ensure that your systems are capable of communicating with external partners and providing the data to required authorities. But then again, this is like I showed in the first example, building these capabilities can be done upfront already. Products can have the appropriate coding built in, so making these things a bit more easier. And it is also why we want to highlight these standards is that, for instance, GS1, it is industry agnostic. So basically, you could be utilizing these things no matter in what industry your company is operating on, and that's actually the built into the EU regulations that you should keep everything as open as possible. So they are not dictating that you should be using GS1, but we've been using these standards for quite some time whenever it's appropriate. And the main reason is, of course, like I said, that they are widely adopted and they are applicable in different industries. So yeah, then point number 3, investing on adaptive platforms. This is considering these things that I quickly demonstrated to you. This picture here is illustrating this material flow from the raw material providers to the customers, and it is clear, as you can see, there are multiple IT systems involved, ERP systems, MES systems, and so forth, different suppliers and partners, and of course then a lot of checkpoints to regulatory and authorities, a lot of interactions, and in the bottom there is this traces information system, which is then at the end of the day collecting a lot of data. Everyone understands that these red dots, they will mean a lot of changes. And of course, if we think that this is done in such a way that it's not only the cost, we should avoid re-implementing these things when the regulations change. And this kind of approach that we've been typically following, that every detail has to be defined and then IT is implementing these changes, it won't work for obvious reasons. What we are suggesting here that you should be following this kind of approach, that instead of customizing each system in your landscape one by one, which will be then expensive and time consuming, our recommendation is that you should be using adaptable platform to handle these missing links, like Kimmo mentioned in his presentation as well. So this platform is incorporated with standards. It has these workflows, missing workflows that you don't have in your business, enabling you to fill in the data that is not available otherwise. So it is like a central connector which can collect and standardize and share the data across all the systems and across all the stakeholders without the need to rebuild everything when something is changing. The key element, of course, in this respect is that you activate certain connections to the suppliers. It's very easy to collect supplier information. It's easy to share the information to the business partners. And when you are utilizing these standardized ways of conveying the data, at the end of the day, everyone is speaking the same language, and you can collect the important information on your platform. So this is then guaranteeing basically that you would stay compliant, and you are able to proceed step by step, and hopefully then incorporating these business-related benefits while you go, and in this way keep the costs and the complexity under control. So in a nutshell, we strongly believe that the compliance is always, it's a burden, but if it's done in a bit more strategic way, it is possible to enable these business benefits as you go, because in most of the cases you already have a lot of useful data, but it's not used in that sense, and then probably there will be these kind of built-in mistakes that we would have to have everything in place in certain format in order to be used. So you have the data, you should be using it proactively, and then when the time comes by, you will have to add new data for the compliance when the regulations are actually developing. We can clearly see that it's also opening the door for innovation, because you can introduce new services, new capabilities, new data streams to your customers when you do it in clever ways. And like I said, if you actually use, for instance, digital link on your products, it will be so much easier to incorporate these things at the later stages. And of course, when we are following these standards, it will help you to break down the silos. It will bring, at the end of the day, a lot of visibility to your business, because at the end of the day, you will be having the events, who did what and when, and that data can also be utilized in the reporting when you compare the logistics service providers, how long it took for certain actions to happen, and these kind of things. So 3 points: proactive, collect the data, try to have this kind of platform at the end of the day, and pay attention to these interactions between the business partners and utilize the standards. These are the key takeaways which we've been following almost like 10 years now, without actually doing it from the regulations perspective, but from the business perspective instead. So that was all that I had to share here. It's a very broad topic, so it was just a scratch on the surface. And for that reason, we have there the free white paper for you to download. It is highlighting these topics that I mentioned in a bit more detail. You can scan the code there or go to our webpage to download it. And whenever you have certain other questions regarding the compliance topics, you can contact Sampo Ranta. He is our compliance specialist in that sense. And for the DACH region, if you want to talk in German, you can call to Julia as well. So thank you from my part.